Hello everyone, I'm Splash and I am an old Dragon Age fan. For those of you who already know me, I am now 30 plus hours into the story of Dragon Age the Veilguard. For those of you who are new here, I decided to live stream a blind playthrough so that my friends and followers could see the game for what it is and decide for themselves if they wanted to buy it or not. Why? Because I was skeptical from the very beginning. That sounds like a bad introduction for a game, but I had my reasons. As I already mentioned, I am a fan, which means that I would play the game for the sake of the story, whether I liked it or not. That was my perspective as I bought the game, at least. My initial skepticism came from the fact that BioWare, the studio behind Dragon Age the Veilguard, had been in turmoil for the last 10 years. With a change in direction with Dragon Age 4, later known as Dragon Age Dreadwolf, or just recently Dragon Age the Veilguard, it felt like the failure of both previous games, Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda, was a promise of what's to come. Still, I was one of those who enjoyed Dragon Age Inquisition, a game that won Game of the Year in 2014. I wanted to like the Veilguard, and I wanted to like the Veilguard a lot. And the closer we got to the release, it just got weirder and weirder. With articles either delivering overpraise or doubt, content creators giving a mixed rating after trying the pre-release review copies, then lastly, the articles that made it sound like the game sold much better than expected, even though everyone could see that it didn't. So, the old video game websites you used to be able to trust, such as IGN and Kotaku, they were clearly sugarcoating something, because the true numbers were easy to see over at Steam, compared to, for example, Baldur's Gate 3, which is a game that has been around for more than a year since full release, or if we have a look at one of our all-time favorites, Valheim for the matter, the math isn't mathing. How was this game such a huge success for a AAA studio? Then came the reviews from the gamers. Sure, the game is still viewed as mostly positive, but that number is dropping by the day. With all this in mind, I knew that I needed to view this game as neutrally as I possibly could. I couldn't be overly negative, since that seemed to be the fashionable way to go. But I also couldn't be overly positive because, well, that would clearly be dishonest. This is why I decided to wait until now, 30 hours in, to give my review. Let's start with the pros. It is an absolutely gorgeous game. Every area of the map is beautifully crafted and there is always something to see and explore. The main story has so far not disappointed, but I haven't finished it yet. The storytelling is straightforward and easy to process through. The small details that are there for immersion, for example, how your companions return to a conversation that has been interrupted after a fight, or how it seems as though they get to know you as well as you get to know them with every dialogue choice you make. Then come the cons. The first issue I had with this game was lag. My computer surpasses the recommended system requirements, and still I had to lower the graphics significantly to be able to play the game. I have also had several game-breaking crashes between scenes, making the game very unpredictable. Is this even optimized? The combat gets repetitive very quickly, and enemies are predictable. Every time you walk into the crossroads, for example, you know that you will meet opposition. You even know where they will spawn in and what they are. It gets so boring that fast travel to avoid the crossroads becomes inevitable. And this is sad because it drags you up from the immersion and removes you from the beautiful areas that you really would like to explore. The quests might lead you to different areas from time to time, but the rest is still just the same. Go here, kill that, talk to some person, kill another thing, go home, discuss with the companions. It feels like any other MMORPG out there, and that is a type of game that is immensely boring to play on your own, but great when you hang out with friends. It becomes pretty obvious that there were other plans for Veilguard at some point, which also articles can tell us about. Some of the companions are very strangely written and their dialogues are stilted and unnatural. I say some, because every once in a while there is a gem which makes you think back to the good old days. These moments are few and far apart, so mostly you have a dialogue that makes you space out and just give any random reply really, because frankly you don't care. Half of the time, when you actually focus on what the companions are saying, you are so utterly confused about what's coming out of their mouths that you don't know if it's supposed to be like that for storytelling reasons or not. And because of that, you end up asking yourself if the fictional people around you are supposed to be stupid or just introverts that don't know how to interact with other people rather than focusing on the story you actually came for. After more than 30 hours in the game, I still don't feel anything about the characters. My main character is bland, the guy you thought would be the main big bad is stuck in the fade. And worst of all, the companions mostly feel like a bunch of 12-year-olds who dump their traumas in your lap for no apparent reason. You walk there in the woods, it's a lovely day and the birds are chirping, then all of a sudden there is a cutscene and you are delivered their entire childhood sub-story in the cringiest way, as if that is how you talk to people you just met. Why would you tell me that? You don't know me. You are constantly told what's happening, as if you couldn't understand that for yourself. Oh, look, the bad guys are aiming for us again. Oh, did you read that? Let me repeat that once more, just to make sure you understand. Then we reach the puzzles. They are so simple. It's yet another thing that gets boring. Just like the combat, the puzzles feels like something that is there for the simple reason to be in the way for the player, only with the purpose of making the game feel longer than it really is. Because of that, you stop exploring the maps again. You just move straight forward to finish a quest and skip the rest. Which, as I said before, is a shame, because the different areas you can visit are absolutely gorgeous. Overall, it feels like the game is aimed towards a new audience. Maybe that is the thing. The old fans are just getting old. We are the bunch that enjoyed reading between the lines to figure out what was going on. We are the ones who could spend days on solving a puzzle. We are those players who returned for a second playthrough as the Joker after the serious playthrough just because of the dialogue choices and how funny they were. Will I return for a second playthrough in this game? Probably not. Would I recommend anybody else to buy this game? Nope. Only if it's on sale and you're extremely bored. I will still finish this playthrough and I will do it live with as few opinions as I possibly can. This just so that others can see for themselves if they want to buy it or not. No, just stop right there. I have streamed this horror fest for yet another couple of hours and reached Wise House. If I continue, I'll have to hospitalize myself for self-harm. I'm serious. I'm dead serious. The combat is so repetitive and boring that I'd rather quit playing the game than continue for the sake of the story. You can say get good all you like. I gave up when I realized that I would have to do the same thing I had already done for 2 hours straight for yet another 2 hours. And for what? For more of the same? Nope, that's not happening. Just saying. But how did we end up here? How is this even possible? The lead writer behind the Veilguard is the same person who gave us Trespasser, the DLC that left us with a bittersweet cliffhanger, wanting more for 10 years after Inquisition. Trick Wicks, with 19 years of experience writing for BioWare alone, is not a bad writer, so I ask again, what happened? Was it because of too many changes in direction, or did they run out of time? BioWare, the studio behind the Dragon Age franchise, used to be pioneers when it came to storytelling in video games. They made the title Baldur's Gate a household name back in 1998. They gave us revolutionary classics like Neverwinter Nights. They laid the groundwork for almost every online RPG that came after. What made these games stand out among others was that every choice you as a player made had consequences down the line. The players weren't just experiencing a story anymore, they shaped it with their own actions. This is why I say that storytelling always was what BioWare did best. That was especially apparent back in 2007 when the studio left the turn-based aspect behind and released a completely new and original IP, the science fiction role-playing game Mass Effect. What made this game such a hit was the combination of storytelling from their earlier games and more immersive action-packed gameplay. They poured that passion into every aspect of that game and created something that hadn't been seen before, and it was a huge triumph. So let's return to Dragon Age. With the recipe for success in their back pocket, BioWare came back to their fantasy roots. Focus was set on creating a world that was different from everything else out there. Dark and broken rather than pretty and colorful. Inspiration was taken from history and politics. Characters given grey morals and tough choices. Dragon Age Origins was born. The release in 2009 was yet another massive accomplishment, and the game won numerous awards, many of them for storytelling. With the dark and gritty themes in a world where you as a player couldn't be sure if you would be alive towards the end of the tale, there was nothing else like it. Then EA came along, and for most of us old fans, this is where everything went wrong with BioWare. With EA giving BioWare strict deadlines, it was impossible to create a sequel that could carry the torch of the Origins. There are of course two sides of that coin here. On one hand, EA could certainly be viewed as the corporate big bad wolf in this scenario, but from what we've seen these last few years, maybe BioWare didn't have the structure the studio needed to be effective either. If we look at the numbers, we might get some answers. Dragon Age Origins took 6 years in production, whereas Dragon Age 2 only took a little over 1 year. The sequel still sold quite well, so who was right? Of course it depends on what you prioritize. The team was forced to make compromises with the storytelling. The maps were few, small and often reused with few changes added. Since EA also wanted to attract more players, the combat was made faster and more action-centered. As mentioned, Dragon Age 2 technically was a success, even though many players in retrospect say that this is where BioWare started to lose the grip of who they were. The follow-up with Mass Effect 3 and the controversial ending that had players storming the forums hardly made the situation any better. When BioWare turned their focus back to Dragon Age again, they put all their effort into Inquisition, the third game in the series. From my perspective, they managed to do something huge by combining what was good in the two earlier parts of the series, creating something that not only had fun combat system, but also the aspect of tactical planning and great storytelling. The maps were beautiful and absolutely massive, the choices you made could have horrible consequences, the companions around you had depth and real problems that you could relate to. Inquisition was yet another critical success, earning Game of the Year in 2014, but the player base had already noticed the crack. This made them more critical than before. Sure, EA and BioWare reached for a broader audience when producing both Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, and of course it changed the series, but in my opinion they didn't overreach, not until now. So let's get back to the question at hand. With a background in storytelling and with such an experienced leader writer at the helm, how did we get here? How did the same writer that led us through the tear-jerking end of Inquisition produce something as bland as the Veilguard? In my opinion, it feels like the studio was trying to appeal to an audience they don't know. And by doing so, they alienated their faithful fanbase. Newer players aren't interested because it's just the same as everything else. Why give Dragon Age a chance when you already know Marvel? I know, I really sound bitter when I say that it feels like the developers think that their new demographic is a stereotypical youth that doesn't exist outside of their own minds. I was hoping for a compelling story to follow what I already was invested in. Instead, the Veilguard is a condescending mess that either tells the player what to think, reminds them of what they're doing, or tries to keep them awake with flashing lights and loud noises. To me, this reminds me more of a clip on TikTok with Subway Surfers in a smaller window below than a video game. Everything is delivered and repeated in bite-sized chunks, which hardly delivers any genuine experiences that stay memorable. I know for a fact that as long as you can present a compelling story, that is the only distraction you need. For BioWare, the recipe for success has been their storytelling all along, so of course both the old fans and the new ones are disappointed when expectations aren't met. This is also why I give this game a loud and heartfelt meh.